although probably increasingly the West. It ain't my lived experience, Sebastian. I've moved out of the capital precisely because of the levels of crime, the levels of street harassment, the levels of...
You heard that sentence, and that's the moment everything changes. Because this isn't theory anymore. This is someone walking away from the capital because daily life became unbearable. And from here on, watch what happens every time reality collides with reassurance. Because this conversation isn't really about crime figures or councils. It's about whether lived experience is allowed to count at all.
Looking at London in different ways. You've got the Greens looking to make gains, reform, not surprising, they're going for the Tory heartlands of London, if you like, the outskirts, as you say, that a lot of them voted Brexit, a lot of them aren't happy about ULEZ, often because they're drivers driving out of London. But broadly, I think Sadiq has had a really successful time. And do you know what? I challenge you on crime. A lot of those figures are coming down. Knife crime lower now than it was in 2016. The murder rate is lowest since 2003 or something. It's lower than most European capitals and certainly lower than every US state. And, you know, we talk a lot about stolen watches and handbags and all of those expensive items, which, you know, when it happens, of course, it's horrible. But the rates of those are falling drastically, you know, 60% year on year. So the position is improving.
Although probably increasingly the West. It ain't my lived experience, Sebastian. I've moved out of the capital precisely because of the levels of crime, the levels of street harassment, the levels of dirt, the rapidly changing demographics, which, you know, you're not allowed to say this because you're a racist if you do. But, you know, I used to live in Earl's Court, and within 4 years, it went from being, all right, a bit of a bogey part of the borough of Kensington, but a nice place to live, very family oriented, to within those 4 years just becoming something unrecognisable. All those small independent shops had closed, yet more betting shops, yet more takeaway shops, yet more vape stores, souvenir shops. It seemed to me a lot of the hotels in Earl's Court might no longer be doing holiday trade or tourist trade, but might be making their money from various entities who pay them to look after asylum then. And everybody I speak to is saying the same thing. Everybody now, if you live in London, has had some sort of experience or knows of someone who's had some sort of experience, which it's not just a case of, oh, well, they tried to nick your phone, it's only a phone, everyone's got phone insurance. It changes the whole way you live, especially perhaps if you're a woman, from there on afterwards. You're too scared to get your phone out of your handbag. You know, if you're walking, you get out of the tube and you don't quite know which way to go, you can't just go, oh, let me check. You know, you constantly look over your shoulder. It just felt like a constant knot in my sternum, that sort of tight grip of fear.
It's been a real issue, and the stats bear that out as well. And look, I'm pleased to see the Met getting a hold on it. There was a story I was talking about on another channel the other day about the bikes that can ride quickly enough to catch up with these guys, and you know, I hold them to account often as well in my job as a counsellor, and it's a very visible crime, isn't it? So when it happens to you or you see it happen to someone else, you get that sense that crime is everywhere, whereas if burglary were going through the roof, we probably wouldn't notice it as much because you don't tend to notice a burglary. That said, I think you put your finger on the real issue when you talked about housing. Of course, there is a massive housing crisis. That is probably the biggest problem that London has. But doesn't it also show us that London is a victim of its own success? So many more people want to move to London than we have housing for. So really the direction of...
This is the sleight of hand. Fear is reframed as perception. Experience is diluted into context. And responsibility is spread so thin that no one is ever accountable. Notice what's missing here. Any moment of pause. Any acknowledgement that something has gone wrong. Instead, the message is simple. Things are improving, so stop complaining. That's not leadership. That's deflection.
Because there's a lot, when you look at the demographics coming into London, there's increasingly amount of illegals in London. But also, one of the big problems we've had when it comes to housing stock is for too long, we've allowed miscreants from foreign countries to use buying housing stock in London as their Swiss bank account. You know, when they had these new developments down in, what's it called, the place with the new American embassy. I want to call it 12 Trees. Yeah. What's it called?
Nine Elms.
9 Elms, that's it. 12 Trees, 12 Trees used to be a rugby player for Gloucester. That's why that popped in my head. But when those were advertised, all the brochures were being done in Cantonese. You know, there are whole entire blocks being bought by Emiratis. You know, that it's used because it pushes the price of the housing stock up. They can sell it on and make a ton of money. You know, that's part of the reason why there's not enough available housing. And also, when you look at how many people are being given social housing who weren't even born in the country, it sucks, quite frankly, if you're a Brit living in your capital city, because it doesn't... The story of this Egyptian is embarrassing, isn't it? I mean, Allah Abdel Fattah. It's not just embarrassing for Labour, it's very embarrassing for the Conservatives. It's very embarrassing for those brain-dead celebrities who all sort of, you know, recited in their most sort of histrionic thespian way passages from his letters from prison or whatever. I mean, it's just for crying out loud. You know, the guy says, oh, I made a mistake. It was a sort of, you know, venting things as a frustrated young man. He was 31. A lot of people saying he probably hasn't continued all that ranting because he's been in clink over in Cairo. I mean, you know, do you think that we've done the right thing by campaigning to get this guy out of prison and inviting him over here when, frankly, his connection to Britain's pretty tenuous?
Yeah, there are a lot of parts to this. So let's start with the stuff that he said, which was horrible. I'm not going to defend that. Of course I'm not. It was awful. And I'm pleased to see that he's apologised as well. I thought that was the right thing to do from him, to address all of that and to try and put it in some sort of context. That should be noted. But the fact is, he is a British citizen. He has been since 2021. I gather that he got that through his mother. And so it was our duty, as it would be for you or I or any other British citizen, if they're imprisoned in a foreign country, to do our best to get them out and to take on those draconian regimes and do our job as Britain to try to show what's right to those countries as well. And so, look, yes, we don't like everything he said in the past, but ultimately it was the right decision to...
When you look at some of the reports coming out, especially the sex attacks on young girls, this isn't a trumped up, overblown, oh, we're just handpicking the odd case that an asylum seeker or a migrant has committed this crime. It's day after day after day. And I mean, look, for instance, this month, the rape in Leamington Spa, I'm not sure I even know about this one, had a reporting restriction placed on the case because the defence lawyer said the video the victim took of the attack was so harrowing, it risked disorder if the public saw it. In addition, Sultani Bakatash, also an Afghan national charged with the rape of 2 teenage girls in Bolton, Dawajan Ahmadzai, another Afghan national found guilty of 2 counts of sexual assault of a child. These are women and girls! These are little children having their lives destroyed! Someone's got to take responsibility this, sure.
Yeah, it's complex, isn't it? And look, I think I agree with you on the top line.
It's not complex. It's blimmin' easy. It's easy, Sebastian. You don't let men in from misogynistic medieval cultures where they stone women to death. You just say no. No. You got nothing to do with us. You're not coming in.
So what would you do then? You'd have certain countries you just wouldn't accept asylum claims from.
Exactly.
And which ones?
Well, Afghanistan for one, sorry, no, you pose too much of a risk to women and children. We've already brought in everyone that, you know, seems to say they've got some sort of connection to the British military. I'm sorry, now we've looked at what's happening to our own, and you protect women and girls first, no to you, no to Eritrea. You can get those statistics of the people who are committing the worst possible crimes and just say no.
Which is that living under the Taliban is really, really horrible. And there will be many people who don't agree with the Taliban. And often, I don't know if you've noticed this, I certainly have, many people who leave these regimes and who you meet in real life, they leave because they hate what is happening in their own country. So they're completely at odds with the attitude of the Taliban towards women. And therefore, I think it would be really problematic to essentially tar everyone with the same brush, to say, I'm sorry, we've looked at the statistics and many of your people...
Sometimes your life ain't fair. Life ain't fair. Sometimes you've got to do that. And Afghanistan, you know, you can go over the border to Pakistan. Oh, that's right. Even the Pakistanis don't want the Afghans anymore. There's 53 Islamic republics. If they want to go to misogynistic cultures, go there. It's not our problem. It shouldn't be at the expense of girls.
The first is that they are going there.
When you keep hearing day after day, can't even show the video of one sex attack because it's too harrowing. I'm sorry, we've had the grooming gang scandal. We're now beginning to see regularly what is happening to girls. Sebastian, come on. As a country, we just go, no. We can say no. It doesn't make us bad people to go, do you know what? Actually, I'm a bit worried and I want to protect our daughters of this nation first. Yeah, would you let anybody homeless come and live in your house? Just anyone, because they're homeless?
I'm not entirely sure where you're going with this.
Well, what I'm saying is I could say that anybody living on the streets is having a hard time. They probably wouldn't want to be living on the streets. So does that mean that you and I have to just say to anyone who's living on the streets, come on, I've got a spare room, in you come? Or would we worry about the integrity of our own houses, the safety, whether it's our problem? We're going to have rapists and paedophiles and monsters in this country, fine. It doesn't mean we have to import a load of them from countries who statistically have a, proclivity towards that behaviour. And statistically, it is borne out with empirical data. Why are we prioritising them instead of the safety of girls, Sebastian? Come on!
Hang on, Alex, because you just told me that you don't think it's realistic to punish civil servants retrospectively when they allow people in and then they go on to commit a rape. And that's exactly what we're facing here. None of us know who a future rapist is. It could be an Afghan, it could be a Brit, it could be a Frenchman, it could be a German. Anybody could be a future rapist, and we can't guess who they are.
Sebastian, I think we can make some educated assumptions, and there's nothing wrong about doing that.
Someone of doing something that they haven't done yet. That's just a basic fact of the law and of time, frankly. Rapists, I think, is really, really unfair.
I'm not tarring them all as rapists. I'm saying statistically, it is borne out in fact. It is borne out in fact that men from that country are more likely to commit a sexual crime than men from other nations. And our first priority as a country is the safety of our children. Okay, we're not a civilised nation if we don't go along with that. If instead we prioritise Lord knows who from Lord knows where. It's a madness.
What stats are you relying on when you're making that?
I made a whole documentary on this. You could go watch it on YouTube.
Give me the recap now, very quickly.
Oh, do you want me to actually Google it? Because I really don't have time to go and replay a whole documentary.
I just want to hear
at what is going on. Or do you know what, Sebastian? How about one day you and I play a game of let's walk around London together. I will wear a dress, have my blonde hair out and some high heels. You can walk about 10 paces behind me. We'll go to certain neighbourhoods and you can see what people like me have to go through. Or perhaps you want to go and claim all these men are normal to the mothers of the girls whose lives have been destroyed.
I don't doubt that at all, but I think I know you will, as my female friends and those in my life tell me, you get that from white.
Certain cultures that persist, that think that women who perhaps are not from their culture, who aren't covered up with a hijab, are fair game, who don't have the same cultural mores as we do because they've not been brought up here, who've sat on their phone, looked at pornography, see a girl with blonde hair and think she's easy meat. That is reality. And until we can listen to women, until we can protect women and children, we're failing. We're failing as a country, and I'm fed up of people throwing moral superiority. Oh, you're a racist. Oh, that's not very kind. I don't care. I don't want one more girl's life destroyed by open-door immigration, which is dangerous. It is wrecking our country. It is wrecking our security. We don't.
This wasn't just an interview. This was a perfect demonstration of why so many people feel completely ignored. You saw it. You heard it. You felt the hesitation every time the conversation moved from comfort to consequence. This is a pattern. When crime rises, it's reframed. When women feel unsafe, they're given context. When communities say something is breaking, they're told it's complicated. And while politicians debate language and optics, figures like Nigel Farage gain ground, not because everyone agrees with them, but because nobody else is listening. This is why trust is gone. Because people aren't asking for perfection. They're asking to be believed. Instead, they're managed, reassured, and quietly dismissed. A country that refuses to prioritize safety eventually loses legitimacy altogether. And this conversation showed exactly how that happens. So ask yourself, is this incompetence or cowardice? And would you trust people like this to run the country? If this said out loud what you've been thinking quietly, like the video, subscribe, and turn on the bell.